And so, what I want to spend today talking about is the derivatives business that you guys are building, and you have a very unique view, I think, of derivatives. One from just the importance that it will hold in the industry, but also kind of how to address it as an institutional product and infrastructure. So maybe let's just start with, for like the people who don't know, let's just start one on one. Like, what is a derivative, and why is it important?
Sure. And I think just the concept of derivatives scare people a lot. And we want to dispel that myth. Regulators are often concerned about them and that talk about the risks that they bring. But to us, in many ways, it's a lot about risk management. And actually what derivatives allow is your ability to reduce risk. So essentially, a derivative is getting economic exposure to an underlying asset class without actually having to own that asset class. And the most common ones you'll come across will be futures and options. Now, every day in traditional finance, these trade in inordinate amounts of size and are being used by retail and institutions across the board. I think where we've looked at it is you can't really build an institutional asset class business without understanding that you need the derivatives piece. And really, it's about educating not just our customers on the platform, but also working with the regulators to ensure that they're comfortable with the way we're doing it, to draw those parallels with the derivatives worlds that's used, or the derivatives methods that are used in traditional finance, but also understanding where the benefits for, specifically in this case, cryptocurrency derivatives, could really play out. So really, that's the ethos, that's the thinking. The key piece for us is really, okay, how do we give access to all of our customers for that product? Because there are a number of other derivatives exchanges out there, and we're doing it differently from them. And we're trying to find that bridge between the two. So we have currently futures live on our platform. We will have options trading, in the coming months and quarters. But we're going to do them slightly differently to some of the other platforms you might know in the derivative space, but also slightly differently from how you might have seen options trade in traditional finance.
So talk through a little bit about that nuance in terms of how you guys view it differently than other people in the industry.
Sure. I think the key element for us is how we manage customers' risk on the platform. So as most people are aware, you can come and trade. The most simple derivative out there is a future. And people will talk about leverage. It's a fairly common phrase. You can go onto a crypto exchange and trade 100 leverage future. The reality is that future is not leveraged at all. It's the platform that gives you leverage. And understanding that subtle difference might not impact most people on a day-to-day basis because they see them as one and the same. But there's a very specific difference between a leveraged product and getting leverage on a product. And what we want to do is make sure people understand that difference. So you're not buying a product that's inherently leveraged. You're using your capital to allow you to buy more of a product with less money. And your leverage is in the way you use your capital, not in the way the product itself is structured. And I think that's important that people understand that, because you're not forced to take risk you don't want to take. You can go and buy a 3 or 4 or 10 times levered ETF, for example, on an index. Every unit of that you buy, you have 10 times as much exposure. Now, you can roughly do the same thing by buying 10 times as many futures, with the same amount of capital. But at any point, you could reduce that number. So I might not want to have 10 times as much exposure. I could, buy 5 or 2 or whatever it might be. And so understanding that you're really in control of how you get exposure and how you take risk is a key thing. And then understanding how we help you manage that in a fair and transparent way. And I think that's one of the fundamental differences. In terms of allowing our customers to get access to these products, we're not trying, Equus, we see ourselves as a platform. It's a utility. We're here to provide people a safe place to transact. We're not here to make money from people who don't understand necessarily the risks that they're taking. And so we want to make sure that the processes that we put in place that mitigate your risk on that platform are done fairly, they're done transparently. We're not actually trying to make money from other people's misfortune or misunderstanding of products. We don't want that. What we want to do is make sure what we want to do is provide that marketplace and a utility. And really it's about how we educate people to use these products properly, but then also how we ensure that when they are using them, they're doing it in a safe way.
Talk through kind of why somebody would use this. I know that you guys think a lot about risk management, you think a lot about capital efficiency, but just explain those a little bit more and kind of just walk me through somebody coming to your platform that wants to use these derivatives, kind of what they can expect in both the risk management bucket and the capital efficiency side.
Sure. So if you imagine, there's probably a lot of people for whom owning and maintaining a balance of Bitcoin is a key part of their own personal balance sheet. That's becoming a more and more prevalent view, and we all understand a lot of the fundamental economic reasons as to why that view is becoming more and more mainstream. Now, you can go onto a number of different exchanges and buy some Bitcoin. You could do it even off an exchange, and you can hold it in a wallet. And we've already talked a little bit about the custody piece, so that piece is already in place. Now, I guess the difference that we want to talk about is when you combine both a derivatives exchange and a spot exchange together, and you understand that people are looking at that holistically. I might own some Bitcoin, but I might have the view that in the short term, as we're seeing right now, you might get a small correction in the price. I might say, look, I'm okay, I'm happy with that. I can live with that sort of P&L fluctuation in my life. Or I might say, look, I can feel the supply-demand dynamic. We might have gone a little bit ahead of ourselves too quickly, or we've not pulled back enough yet for people to start again. And I'd like to protect myself for that. So what I can do then is sit with my core Bitcoin holding, and maybe I want to sell some futures against it. So my exposure to Bitcoin reduces. But it doesn't cost me, I don't ever sell my actual Bitcoin. I just sell some of my exposure to my Bitcoin. But what happened is, because we understand that you have some Bitcoin and you sold some exposure to Bitcoin, you don't have any risk to us. So we're not going to charge you to do that. So we won't charge you margin on your short position because we know you have a long position. Now, ironically, if you've done that on two different platforms, platform A doesn't know what platform B is doing. So they will charge you because they don't understand your whole risk. So again, it's about building that ecosystem, understanding that we want to look at risk holistically. We want to look at your whole portfolio. And if you show us your whole portfolio, we'll allow you to manage your risk so much more effectively because we won't charge you anything to be able to do that from a risk management perspective. So in its kind of simplest sense, that's where we're really trying to get to with that. We offer derivatives, across a range of different functions. If we look just at that sort of perpetual futures piece, we will have dated futures as well. But if we use that perpetual futures piece, which is the common product, across the crypto space, it's using that product against your core position that we really think will benefit. But also, you understand that if you have that position, how we're going to manage that through time. If you use a lot of capital by trading futures, we're not going to try and benefit from you if you run up against a headwind that you really weren't predicting. And so the liquidation process that we run is extremely fair and extremely transparent. We're not taking positions off you that we would then try and benefit from by selling those out in the market at a different price. We actually make the whole liquidation process transparent and clear, and we make it a competitive process. Prices are deemed by supply and demand. You can't have a fair price for an asset unless there's supply and demand, vying to create that equilibrium price. So at the same point, we don't want to take positions off customers if there isn't a competitive price to do it. So even through our liquidation process, we use a competitive price model to ensure that any position that's taken off you because you can no longer afford to keep it is also done in a completely fair way. And we make no money from any of the liquidation process. That's actually managed by effectively external people. And to that point, actually, as a platform itself, when I talked earlier about us being a utility, we have a hard and fast rule, and we've made it public in our statements to the SEC and as part of our process for getting listed. We don't market make on our own exchange. So we are never counterpart to any of your trades on our public exchange. We can't see it. Anyone who's on the platform has no informational advantage or disadvantage compared to ourselves. We're trying to create that fair marketplace, and that runs right the way through from the products we put on there to the way those products are traded. And if, unfortunately, at any point a customer can no longer afford to keep a position open, then the process for which that position is closed is again a fair and transparent one that we try and ensure. And that's really the whole ethos behind the setup that we've got.